Hello students, welcome to the second part of the video which is based on the lesson. This is Jody's Fawn. Students, in the first part we have discussed about the incident that happened to his father who got bitten by a rattlesnake, how his father's life was saved by killing the doe and using its heart and liver to take out the poison. Then how Jody convinced his parents that he would go to the forest and find out the fawn, bring it home and then raise it. He got the company of Millville, who agreed to take him to the forest. Then he left Millville at a certain place in the forest and decided to go further alone. We discussed about these things in the first part. Students, now let us see what happened in the story further and let us try to understand that. I'll read out the lines from the lesson and then I'll explain it to you. But before I proceed, one very important advice to you, that is to watch the complete video so that you will understand the explanation better. Plus, there are more interesting things which I'm going to discuss in the video, so if you don't watch the complete video, you will miss those important explanations. Let us begin. He parted the grass at the place where he had seen the fawn. It did not seem possible that it was only yesterday the fawn was not there. He circled the clearing. There was no sound, no sign. The buzzards clacked their wings, impatient to return to their business. He returned to the spot where the fawn had emerged and dropped on all fours, studying the sand for the small hoof prints. The night's rain had washed away all tracks except those of cat and buzzards. So then he parted, means he moved or he pushed aside the grass at the place where he had seen the fawn. It did not seem possible that it was only yesterday the fawn was not there. Only yesterday he saw the fawn, but he found that the fawn was not there that day. Then he circled the clearing and then he was trying to find out some signs or any indication of the fawn, but there was no sound, no sign. Buzzards were clacking their wings, impatient to return to their business. They were on the treetops, so they were waiting. They didn't have patience. They wanted to return back to that place and continue with the work which they were doing. Then he returned to the place where the fawn had emerged and dropped on all fours, studying the sand, and he was looking for small hoof prints. He thought that maybe due to the night's rain, the hoof prints of the animals might have been washed away, except there were some footprints of cats and buzzards. Then let us see what happened. Movement directly in front of him startled him so that he tumbled backwards. The fawn lifted its face to his. It turned its head with a wide, wandering motion and shook him through with the stare of its liquid eyes. It was quivering. It made no effort to rise or run. Jody could not trust himself to move. So there he noticed a movement directly in front of him and he got astonished, startled, because he was not expecting, and suddenly he saw some movement. And then he moved backwards, stumbled backward, means without balance, he moved backward. Then he saw that the fawn lifted its face and looked at him. It turned his head with a wide, wandering motion. It shook him through with the stare of its liquid eyes. The fawn was shivering, shaking slightly, and the fawn didn't try to rise or run away from there. Jody could not trust himself to move. Finally, Jody could not stop himself from trust himself to move. He whispered, "It's me." The fawn lifted its nose. He was very careful. No? If he tries to hurry or if he tries to move quickly, the fawn may get scared, it may try to escape. So he was standing there and he whispered, he talked in a low voice to the fawn. He said, "It's me." The fawn lifted its nose, scenting him. He reached out one hand and laid it on the soft neck. The touch made him delirious. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it. He put his arms around its body. A light convulsion passed over it, but did not stir. Then the fawn lifted its nose, tried to scent him, smell him. Then he reached out one hand and laid on the soft neck of the fawn. The touch made him delirious. Delirious means excited. When he touched the fawn became excited. Have you seen a kid, a baby kid of a goat? Exactly like that. The fawn, a baby deer, also you will find like that. They are very excited if you touch them. They love to play. Then he moved forward on all fours, using his hands and legs both. On all fours he walked till he reached very close to the fawn. Then he put his arms around its body, and there was a light shiver that passed over, but it did not stir. The fawn was not scared due to that. He stroked its sides as gently as though the fawn were a china deer and he might break it. Its skin was very soft, it was sleek and clean and had a sweet scent of grass. He rose slowly and lifted the fawn from the ground. Then he touched the deer very carefully, as if the fawn was made of china clay, a china clay deer. Okay, and very carefully the children handle the toys which are made of china clay, because if it falls, then everything will be over. So he was touching it very softly. It was sleek and clean. Sleek means smooth and shining, and there was a very nice scent of grass coming from the fawn. He rose slowly, lifted the fawn from the ground. Its legs hung limply. They were surprisingly long, and he had to hoist the fawn as high as possible under his arm. Then he lifted the fawn as high. It had long legs, so he had to lift him up and under his arm. He was afraid that it might kick and bleat at sight and smell of its mother. He skirted the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket. It was difficult to fight through with his burden. The fawn's legs caught in the bushes, and he could not lift his own with freedom. He tried to shield its face from prickling vines. Its head bobbled with his stride. His heart thumped with the marvel of its acceptance of him. He reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to the intersection with the road home. He stopped to rest and set the fawn down on its dangling legs. It wavered on them. It looked at him and bleated. So he was in the beginning, he was afraid. He thought that the fawn will try to run away from him, it will kick him, it will make sound, it will bleat. Especially when he passed through the place where its mother was killed, it may think of its mother and it may be feeling very uncomfortable. So he tried to move away from that clearing, moved through the places where there were thick scrubs, and then it was very difficult to carry the fawn. The fawn's leg caught in the bushes. He was not able to lift his own leg, so he had problems. Then he had to protect the fawn from that thorny bushes. Its head bobbed with his stride. His heart thumped with the marvel of its acceptance of him. Heart was thumping, beating fast. Then he reached the trail and walked as fast as he could. He came out of that place, reached the main way, and then he kept walking till he reached the junction, intersection with the road home. The junction from where there was a way straight to his home. He stopped to rest, kept the fawn down on its dangling legs, means imbalanced legs, because it was very small. It wavered on them. It looked at him and bleated. Then the fawn looked at him and it was bleating, making sound like a goat. He said, enchanted, "I'll carry you after I get my breath." He remembered his father saying that a fawn would follow if it had first been carried. He started away slowly. The fawn stared after him. He came back to it and stroked it and walked away again. It took a few wobbling steps toward him and cried piteously. It was willing to follow him. It belonged to him. It was his own. He was light-headed with his joy. He wanted to fondle it, to run and romp with it, to call to it to come to him. He dared not alarm it. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. It seemed to him that he walked without effort. Then he told the fawn that I'll carry you after I get my breath, after taking little rest. And then he remembered his father said that the fawn will follow him. First, if you carry the fawn, then it will follow you. So he tried the same with the fawn. He moved the distance. He wanted the fawn to walk. Then the fawn was crying piteously after taking some wobbling steps, means shaky steps. Then what happened? It was willing to follow him. The fawn was willing to follow him because it belonged to him. It was his own fawn. He was light-headed with his joy. Means light-headed here means he was unable to think clearly. He wanted to touch it, fondle it, play with it, run with it, to call to it to come to him, but he did not want to make it scared, alarm him. So he picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. It seemed to him that he walked without effort. So he was carrying it and he was so happy that he was bringing the fawn home. He didn't even feel the uncomfortable, the problems that he was facing to carry it. It seemed to him as if he was moving without any effort, without any hard work. His arms began to ache and he was forced to stop again. When he walked on, the fawn followed him at once. He allowed it to walk a little distance, then picked it up The distance was nothing. He could have walked all day and into the night, carrying it and watching it follow. He was wet with sweat, but a light breeze blew through the June morning, cooling him. So he was some distance he carried. Sometimes he wanted the fawn to follow it. Whenever he was tired, he just wanted the fawn to follow him. So he did like that, and he said that the distance which he covered and the distance which was yet to be covered was nothing for him. If someone would have asked him to walk the whole day and whole night, he would have done that. He was wet with the sweat, but a light breeze, air was blowing, which cooled him. Sky was clear, very clear, and he came to the clearing. It was fresh and green after the night's rain. He fumbled with the latch and was finally obliged to set down the fawn to manage it. Then he had an idea. He would walk into the house, into Penny's bedroom, with the fawn walking behind him. But at the steps, the fawn barked and refused to climb them. He picked it up and went to his father. Penny lay with closed eyes. So, finally what happened? He reached the place, reached the clearing, came out of the forest. He was near his home. Then he had an idea that he would walk into the house, he would let the fawn follow him when he enters his father's bedroom. But the fawn was not willing to climb the steps and he had to carry it. When he entered his father's room, his father was sleeping with closed eyes. Jody called, "Pa, look." Penny turned his head. Jody stood beside him. The fawn clutched hard against him. It seemed to Penny that the boy's eyes were as bright as the fawn's. He said, "I'm glad you found him." Then when he went to his father and he said, "Father, look." That time Penny turned his head. Jody was standing beside him. The fawn was also there, which was very close to his body, clutched hard against him, touching him hard. It seemed to Penny that boy's eyes and the fawn's eyes were same. Both were shining brightly. And then he told his son that, "I'm glad you have found him." Jody then went to the kitchen. The fawn wobbled after him. A pan of morning's milk stood in the kitchen safe. The cream had risen on it. He skimmed the milk into a jug. He poured milk into a small gourd. He held it out to the fawn. It butted it suddenly, smelling the milk. He saved it precariously from spilling over the floor. It could make nothing of the milk in the gourd. Then Jody went to the kitchen. Fawn also went after him with some disbalance, and then he found the pan of milk was lying there. A cream had formed on it. Then he skimmed the milk, removed the cream, poured it into a jug, then put it in a small gourd, the shell of the gourd, a vegetable that was used by Jody to feed milk to the fawn. The fawn tried to smell it and all, but there was chance that he would spill the milk on the floor, but it was unable to help itself from the gourd. He dipped his finger in the milk and thrust them into the fawn's soft, wet mouth. It sucked greedily. When he withdrew them, it bleated frantically and butted him. He dipped his fingers again, and as the fawn sucked, he lowered them slowly into the milk. The fawn blew and sucked and snorted. It stamped its small hoofs impatiently. As long as he held his finger below the level of the milk, the fawn was content. It closed its eyes dreamily. It was ecstasy to feel its tongue against his hand. Its small tail flicked back and forth. The last of the milk vanished in a swirl of foam and gurgling. So he tried, when he saw that the fawn was unable to drink the milk from the gourd, he dipped his finger and tried to feed the fawn, put it in his mouth, and the fawn was sucking his finger, the milk from his finger. He kept doing that, and he also saw the excitement on the fawn. It was very excited. Have you seen a kid, God's baby, drinking milk, mother's milk? They are very excited, moving its tail. Sometimes they try to scratch with their hoofs on the ground, showing happiness, expressing happiness. It was sucking, snorting, making heavy breathing sound. Then it went on like that. It was drinking very nicely with closed eyes till the last drop of milk was finished. It formed, and that also got finished. And this story is written by Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings. Very interesting story and very appreciable character of Jody, a boy who is very concerned about animals. He was really worried about the baby deer because the mother deer was killed, and that was used to save the life of his father, not for any other purpose. That was killed in order to save his father's life. And then he wanted to do something for the baby deer, because if it is left in the forest, there was a danger to its life. Other animals would kill him, or else he would die due to starvation, because he depended only on milk, and how would he get that in the forest? So a very sensible boy with a good understanding, and finally he was able to achieve his aim. He got green signal from his parents, and then he did that without even involving Millville completely. He was able to do that, as he said. So I hope you have enjoyed the story, and I would like to tell you that you read the story nicely. Intentionally I have skipped some meanings, some I have discussed and some I have skipped. Some are already there in the book, and maybe 2-3 words I have missed. So you also learn to search out the meanings. Now you all are in class 8, make use of the dictionary. At times you can do a Google search of the meanings also these days. That can be done. So you make a habit of checking the meanings of the words, of the difficult words, whenever you read something. So that habit will help you to get proper understanding of the words as well. I hope you have understood the story, go through the story, and be in a position to answer the questions as well. Thank you so much for watching this video.